Hi there, I'm Donnie MacRae from the Scotland Excel Academy team, and thanks all, first of all, for accessing our coaching and mentoring session. The session itself, it aims to cater for all, from those of you that are interested in being involved within coaching and mentoring, and to those of you that maybe got it as part of your role, or even if it's just something you've got a limited or base knowledge of the subjects. And we'll look at how coaching differs from mentoring initially, which are often grouped together. So, as I said there, first thing I'd like to go through with you all is probably the key differences between coaching and mentoring. If I look at coaching initially, as it says there, it is a relationship that generally has a set duration. Whereas if you've maybe been involved in mentoring or are indeed yourself a mentor or mentee, that can be set for quite a long period of time, sometimes years. These relationships can last for. Coaching, in essence, is very much more structured in nature, and they are scheduled on a regular basis, indeed probably weekly or monthly, with the individuals. Whereas mentoring is very much an informal basis, and they generally take place at any time where the mentee needs advice, guidance, or as it says there, support. But that's just up. It's mainly led by the mentee. Coaching, in essence, is very generally short term, but with time bound issues around them. And they are generally aligned to focus on very specific development areas or issues that the individual's having within their role. Whereas mentoring will very much focus on the longer term and look at a broader view of the person, both personally and professionally. Another kind of misunderstanding is coaching is generally not performed on the basis that the coach needs to have a direct experience of the individual's formal role. I think the football analogy is quite a good one. There's some very, very successful football coaches who weren't indeed that great players. Some would maybe disagree. So again, it is all about how that coach takes on the role of the coach as opposed to the knowledge they have in the subject, and that's something we'll explore shortly. On the converse to that, mentoring, it is usually a more experienced or qualified person who will guide and support the mentee. And let's be honest, they're there to pass on their knowledge, and a good mentoring relationship can maybe open doors to other opportunities that maybe not be obvious initially through the coaching process. Coaching will very much focus on development issues within the workplace, whereas mentoring should be focused around the career and personal development of the original individual even. So that's really, really important. Coaching very much is focused on specific immediate goals, whereas the mentor will look at the bigger picture and provide support, probably aligned to future roles. That's generally where I've seen mentoring relationships work very, very well. And just to summarise and close off this aspect, it does evolve. Coaching is very much around the specific development areas or issues, whereas mentoring will revolve around the developing that individual or the mentee personally and professionally. So I think that's really, really important. So I just wanted to share that with you first of all, just to kind of illustrate the key differences. There are overlaps that we'll discuss, but I think that's absolutely crucial to outline this from the start. One of the things I'm often asked is, what would you define as qualities of an effective coach? Can be an exhaustive list, but this is a good CMI, the Chartered Management Institute. They outline that a good coach should set a good example. Absolutely, that's going to be probably the most obvious one. I think it's really important that you care about the individual. It's showing an interest and empathy, not sympathy. I think that's the key difference here. The ability to clearly communicate what the vision is that you hope to gain from the coaching experience, but also the current realities. Where are we at? What's happening in the real world? I think it's really important to suspend judgment. Don't dive in with a solution without knowing the bigger picture. So I think that's really, really important. I think a good coach will value creativity from the individual, but also teamwork. Get the individuals to share what's working best with other individuals within the team as well. That's another good coaching approach. Obviously, it's the ability to share information frequently, You know, you might notice a trend in the team or with individuals you're working with. Share that. You know, what's worked with one, what might work with somebody else. But I think it's about putting empowerment back to the individual as well, and ensure that they take responsibility and accountability for how they're going to improve. And I think, you know, to kind of close this element off, it's taking that hands-off approach. You know, it can be very, very intimidating and off-putting if there's too much of a hand-on approach demonstrated. So it's that ability to just take that step back. So I thought that's a good starting point about the qualities that are required of the effective coach. It's obviously tied very much into the overall performance management cycle within any business. And I just wanted to share this with you from Kogan Page publication. And this is Armstrong's Handbook on Performance Management. And I thought it was a really good illustration about, you know, showing the importance of feedback and coaching within the overall process. So obviously we have performance management starts with the setting of objectives, standards, ground rules and expectations. That then leads to the monitoring of the individual and team performance, a review of that performance, the appropriate development planning that's put in place, and that then comes back into the cycle. Obviously, intrinsic to that and at the heart of that is the feedback given to the individual and the team, which has to be done in the right way. But on the back of that, what coaching is actually offered and supplied to the individuals and teams to make that happen. And obviously, we can't forget the recognition and reward, which shouldn't always be monetary, and indeed it not always is. Sometimes even just a pat on the back or an email communication to say a job well done, you know, that can go a long way on motivating individuals and teams. Coaching styles is something that might be kind of obvious to you all, but certainly when I've been delivering training in the past, it's very much that, you know, trying to get people to realise that there are different styles. You might have a preferred style, but you will have to adapt that depending on the skill, knowledge and experience of the individual. So that has to be flexed. To that end, you will have to be very directive and to the extent kind of very non-directive with certain learners or individuals within your team. So that's a very simple diagram that illustrates the kind of type A, B, C and D approach that you should be taking into account and maybe just flexing your own style. So it's very simple, as you can see there. So you've got the identification of any problems initially. The direct approach will entail you as the coach having to come up with identification and the solution. But as you can see there, that then changes through the different styles, whereby the experience, knowledge and confidence even grows, that you get to the non-direct approach, whereby both the identification of any issues that need to be resolved, but also the solution is actually come up with by the learner. You're there to guide, support and offer any encouragement that you can. So the approach, different to the style. You know, a lot of people think coaching is just pulling up a chair or listening to calls remotely. I think it's really, really important to see the bigger picture of the individual or the team, and to do that you need to see it in, you know, some different environments for yourself. How people react to immediate side by side is very, very different to when you're maybe listening remotely. You know, I've seen it from experience. So just make sure you're getting that, you know, different approach for yourself as a coach. So obviously you have the immediate and side by side approach, which is literally that, pulling a chair up. Maybe we have a planned session, but it's been pre-prepared, put in somebody's diary. They know they're going to be listening to you side by side, just to see, because I think it's important to see the work environment of an individual as well, just to see how they're going about and organising their work. So that would be the pre-prepared. Obviously offline, you maybe take someone away, have a one-to-one, have a chat, listen to a call, whatever. So I think that's really important as well, but that has to be planned. There's nothing worse than saying somebody can have a quick word with you, because they're obviously going to think the worst. Human nature states that. But also something that's, you know, I would certainly encourage, if you've never tried this approach before, you know, use team meetings or workshops to have group or team coaching sessions. They're really, really powerful. And it does encourage a lot of team bonding as well. You know, they can share ideas, experiences. They've certainly worked especially well for me in the past. I think underpinning any of those, it's ensuring that you're giving constructive, effective and positive feedback throughout the whole process. can't illustrate the importance of that enough. This is one of probably about 100 different coaching models that are out there. So this is something that you may well be familiar with. For those of you that have never dealt with coaching before, if I was to give you one model to maybe look at, if you have got aspirations to become a coach, this would certainly be the model that I would encourage you to look at. You simply could type that into Google and you'll get copious amounts of detail on it. But in its simplistic form, it is very much just following through this systematic process. So what the GROW model stands for is goal, reality, options and will. So what we mean by the approach to the GROW model is you would sit down with the individual and clarify what is the goal, what do we want to achieve within a set time period or frame. What's the reality? Where are we at just now? So that then allows you to see the gap that's potentially going to have to be bridged. And that way you can set out the actions and timetable for development that needs to take place. That in turn will then allow the options to be explored. So how do we go about this? What options have we got? What are you going to do as an individual? What can I supply as a coach? What's the best way to start this process? But just as importantly and absolutely crucial is the will. Does that individual have the will, the determination, the motivation? Because nothing's going to work if that isn't there. So I just thought it's a really good model. As I said, I've used for a many number of years now, and it's certainly stood me in good stead. So certainly go and seek it out if it's something that is new to you. I'd like to move on now and talk about the role of the manager as a coach. Okay, so as it says there, the manager, it is their job to develop their ability to coach others. I've seen a lot of businesses fail in the past when I was in contracting, where there was a big disparity in about what the managerial role was, as opposed to maybe looking to bring in external coaches to help. I think it's the manager's job to coach individuals. Now that doesn't mean that they spend all their day, all the time sitting side by side with that individual. Coaching can take any number of forms. So I think that's really important to maybe take that on from a team management perspective. So this is from experience, and there are reasons for managers not coaching. And I think fundamentally what I've found is they don't understand the value of it. The value being that the bond that they can get, the motivation that they can foster within their team for taking that element on. They maybe don't have the skills to become an effective coach, or simply they do not have the time. So how do they overcome them? We'll just go back and look at those questions. I think it's important that managers understand and properly investigate the values and benefits of coaching to them as an individual and their teams. If they don't have the skills, seek out. We can certainly help within the academy. If they would like to become more effective coaches, it's one of the great tools in life that can stand you in stead, not just personally, not just professionally, but personally as well. You don't have the time. Through seeing the benefits of coaching, you will make the time. Absolutely, I can guarantee that will happen. There are some pitfalls that I've noticed with certainly for managers, and this is just again from experience. Don't be too rigid in your approach to goal setting. By that I mean, I want X, Y achieved by next week. That can be quite demoralising. So break things down and make sure they're achievable. A lot of people seem to think that performance management is the annual process, the annual performance management review. It's not. It should be ongoing, as we touched on earlier on. It is a process, coaching intrinsic to that part of the process. I think, well, maybe I've been here before. Don't give anybody surprises in relation to poor performance. If you identify any problems, address them at an early stage in the right manner and in the right way. There shouldn't be any surprises, because that can be absolutely demoralising and very demotivating for individuals. But don't neglect the soft issues, about building the relationships. Again, this goes back to being far too rigid. Yes, it's a process, but building relationships and giving feedback should be very, very conversational. It should be a good experience for the individual and for you as the manager or the coach. I'd like to share a model with you now that I've found extremely useful over the last 10 years, and it's by Gerard Egan. And it probably expands on the GROW model, and it's called the skilled helper. It's very much a coaching model. It can get quite complicated, and indeed you could probably spend the whole day exploring the benefits of this model, and I've tried to compact it as best I can for you. He defined that there were 3 separate stages that you had to discuss with an individual, and those stages can best be described in questions. So it's almost working with the individual, or indeed the team. What's the present state of affairs? What do I need or want instead of what I have? That's a really good question to pose to individuals. And how do I get what I need or what I want? Obviously, needs and wants are very personal. So it is a good way of gaining exactly what an individual needs or wants. So the 3 stages then are then lead to the question, so how do we make it happen? So if I look at each stage, kind of in a very hierarchical view, this is how the 3 stages are actually badged, for want of a better word. You've got your current picture. What's the preferred picture for the individual? And based on that, what's the way forward? What I'd like you to take into consideration when you're thinking over the next couple of slides is the key element to me, having adopted this model, is the central part, which is new perspectives, change agenda, best fit strategies. So I'm going to cover this. They are all interlinked. So as you can see there, the stage 1 is this aspect here, which is story, perspectives and value. You then move on to stage 2, which is the possibilities, the change agenda and commitment. And then the way forward is what possible strategies, what best fit strategies, and what's the plan. And I'll expand on these 3 stages now for you. So if I look at the current picture, and a lot of these prompts are good questions to ask and why we ask them. So I've got 3 slides on each stage that I'll take you through. So the current picture, if you're sitting with an individual, what do you want to talk about? Get them to tell you a story. You'll never get a better in-depth knowledge and background about where somebody's mind is at by getting them to tell you exactly how they're feeling. Okay, listen to them. Always the crucial part of coaching. Okay, what might you have missed? Go back and probe, and you might have noticed something obvious that they've not told within their story, because that then will shape some new perspectives. That's where you'll get, if you conducted the chat the right way, you will start to get the individual, or the mentee or the coach or the individual saying to you, "I hadn't thought about that." So you're now beginning to hopefully develop a new perspective with that individual. So get them to what matters most to them. What is the most valuable thing to work on? So if I were to look at a list, what is the most valuable to you to work on? What is the most pressing thing that you'd like to change? So that's then helps to shape the focus. So that then moves on to, you've got an understanding of where that individual is at and what matters to them. So you now want to move on and look at, so what does good look like? What's your preferred picture? So in an ideal world, what do you really, really want? So that's when you get them to imagine the possibilities, of taking themselves forward. I'd really like to move into X, Y, Z role. Okay, let's bring it back down then. So what is a realistic goal for you? So what we can then do is, based on what they would really want, how can we realistically get there? So that is where you set a change agenda for that individual, get them focused very much on their own development journey that's going to hopefully get them as near as possible to the ideal world that they're looking for. Okay, so what are the incentives? What we mean by that is, what's the incentives in doing this? How's it going to benefit you? How's it going to benefit the business? But if it's of a personal nature, what do you hope to achieve? What's the incentives? What are you going to do to make this happen? What personal commitment are you going to put in place? So that's where we get the testing commitment element. And finally, the way forward. You're now at the point whereby you are working with that individual. What can you do to help them? So what strategies will help you get what you want? So again, very similar to the GROW model, what options do you have? Explore the strategies. So what can we do to make that happen? But more importantly, what's going to fit best for that individual? You might think that X is the way forward, but it isn't. It is probably Y. So what makes most sense to that individual? What's going to make them feel most comfortable in taking it forward? What approach do they want that's going to fit them best? So there, once you get to this point, okay, so what is your action plan and how do you get started? So this is where you say, right, show me what you're going to do. We've got that commitment. We've got the approach that's going to fit best for you. So this is a viable plan. How do we take this forward? Don't just leave it on the shelf. So that's a very a very compacted overview of the skilled helper, but I've certainly found it really, really useful working with teams, individuals and businesses, to be honest with you, over the last 10 to 15 years. So it's something, certainly, go and explore it. I'm thinking if it's something that is on your radar to explore more, I would certainly encourage you to do so. Moving on to the mentoring side of things now, I'd like to share a quote with you that we had at our annual conference, literally the month before, or when COVID was rearing its head for us all. I don't think anybody knew the impact it was going to have, but Dr. Gary Gillespie, who was the Scottish Government Chief Economist, he stood up at our conference in Glasgow on the 20th of February, and the first thing that came out of his mouth was that we need to maximise the people assets that we have. I found that really encouraging, and I wasn't expecting it, to be honest. I was actually doing a coaching and mentoring session in the afternoon, and I touched back to this, people's interest on the back of that. I thought that was really encouraging. So I think at that time, I don't know if he had some foresight, but his main drive was that we have to focus on the people that we have. How can we make them better? You know, across the public sector, if that's where you work. So I thought that was really, really encouraging, and it gave me a lot of food for thought, and I have included it in a lot of my mentoring sessions since. So this is probably more a light touch session as opposed to the coaching, because mentoring, there is a crossover, and a lot of it I'll touch back onto what so if I'm just, again, this is back to a hugely influential book that I've read called Coaching and Mentoring at Work by Connor and Pecora. It's a McGraw-Hill publication, quite a tome. It's about 300-400 pages, but I've found it like a Bible over the last number of years. So as it says there, mentoring ongoing, that can last a number of years, as we touched on at the start. It should be informal, and I can't stress that enough. It will be long term, and the mentor will usually be more experienced. So I think that's the kind of starting point to illustrate the differences, as you hopefully can see. Mentor will look at the career and the personal development. That's not to say coaching won't, but I feel mentoring is far, far more about, and having been involved as a mentor over the last number of years, and indeed currently, I find that it very much focuses on the individual, them as a person, because if they can develop personally, you can then see them begin to flower and aspire within their career. What's absolutely crucial is the agenda should be set by the individual, not you as the mentor. You're there to provide support. That's not to say you put pressure on them to fill up your calendar, not at all. But I always open up any mentoring sessions that I have as, well, what do you want to chat about today? Because it is your time with them for them to, fully explore what's on their mind, and again, it's quite an empowering process for them. But again, it is about developing that individual professionally. However, I can't stress enough that working with the personal development will in turn see that grow. Again, there's a variety of different definitions of what the role of the mentor is. That's a definition on screen that you can see there from Megginson. But as we touched on earlier, it will generally be someone more experienced or senior. But I think the key is, if you want to become a mentor, you have to offer it up, but you've got to make sure that you do voluntary. Yeah, and you have to be seen to take it seriously, because it will probably be, although it says they're short or long term, I think the most effective mentoring relationships will be the longer term, months into years, not days and weeks. And it will revolve around the personal, professional and the career development. Now, the mentor can be internal or external to the organisation. It can work either way. It's probably best if it's internal, that's where you focus and see your development. Myself personally, I've had the same mentor for nearly 20 years now, in my first full-time role within the private sector. One of my first full-time roles, and it's still a mentor to this day who offers me guidance and support when I need it. It's actually turned into a friend as well. So that shows you the benefits of having that mentor relationship. People ask me this question, well, what are the key traits? Well, how can I be good at becoming a an effective mentor, not just becoming a mentor. I think for me, it's the ability and the willingness to communicate what you know, share your experience. If if there's been things that you fell foul of, don't be afraid to, share your journey. Make sure you prepare. Don't just pitch up your coffees and sit down and looking flustered or whatever, or looking at your watch, your phone. Make sure you're prepared. If you've got that half hour, that hour, that's the time for that individual. To the point of switch your phone off. I think you've got to be approachable. Make sure you've got available when you need, obviously within reason. You can't be there at the drop of a hat for every the phone going, but set some boundaries about when you can. Set some slots for whatever or whatever works for you. I think the biggest tip I could give is the ability to listen, and it probably touches back in the skilled helper model we spoke about, getting somebody to tell their story. Some of the best mentors around basically don't say very much, but what they say is very, very sage advice. It's that ability to listen. I think you have to be honest. You need to be honest with that individual. You don't want to create delusions of grandeur, and that in turn is the diplomacy. You might have to give them some things they might not want to hear. So just be diplomatic. Be inquisitive. Inquisitiveness. I told you what word to use for this. Don't be nosy. That's what I'm saying. I think you need to be careful with that as well. Show a genuine, empathy that you care. Inquire about them. Probe and question to a point. But you have to have, objectivity and fairness is, that professional element. You have to make sure that that's a key trait that you need to demonstrate as well. And I think it goes without saying, showing that genuine compassion. I think that will make you a very, very effective mentor. So if you want to some of you might be thinking at this point, okay, so what's the benefits of me being a mentee and having a mentor? And I've got a couple of slides now that look at it from both sides. I think you becoming a mentee, if it's maybe something you've not done before, or you want a mentor, I think you're going to get good practical encouragement support externally from your day-to-day role. Yeah, you're hopefully going to learn from the experience of others, and it will increase your social and your professional confidence. Something people maybe don't take into consideration. It will, I can guarantee you that. I've actually seen it myself. You will become more empowered to make decisions because you've got that another set of eyes and ears. So again, I've seen that happen. It will undoubtedly develop your own communication and personal skills. It will, working with that individual. But again, it's going to allow you to develop your own strategies and how you deal with any issues that you're having, both in the work and maybe some personal ones as well. It will give you a clear sense of direction. It's always good to have that sounding board, and that's generally what I've seen mentors been called. That's when you know it's working. But let's be honest, it might get some good, valuable insight that you might not have got about the next stage of your career. So if looking at it from actually taking on the role of the mentor, again, quite similar, but different. You will improve your communication and your personal skills, absolutely. It's a chance for you to develop leadership and management qualities. It's maybe something a lot of people discount. It's going to reinforce your own skills and knowledge in new subjects. Through dealing with a mentee, it's quite fascinating at times, just to see how other worlds, how other roles, work. So you're going to develop new skills as well and knowledge. And it will increase your own confidence and motivation. I'm not going to lie, it does make you feel good. If you're a mentor and you see somebody improving, that in turn is only going to help your confidence. I think you're engaging in a voluntary opportunity and it will be valued by your employers. Don't forget about that. You can enhance your CV and increase your profile. If you're seen to be an effective mentor, that's something you can put in your CV. That says a lot about you as a person as well. And hopefully you're going to in turn gain recognition for that from the individuals that you're working with. But it will, I can tell you right now, it will give you a sense of fulfillment, personal growth. It will make you feel better. No doubt about it. So how can you be an effective mentor? As it says there, with both coaching and mentoring, one person is helping the other with a short-term or a long-term issue, or a mixture of both, hence where the overlap comes. But I want to move on to, we're coming to the end of the session now, but I'm going to talk to you about something called the learning relationship. To be an effective mentor, you have to have in place an effective learning relationship. And I'm going to look at that in more detail with you because it is absolutely crucial. And it is back to the coaching and mentoring book I mentioned earlier on. This was kind of a penny drop moment for me about how you bring all this, the whole relationship together. And I'd just like to share this with you. So it starts off going through from the top, context, client, L&D, change, framework, skills, qualities and ethics. And I'll just take you through each element very, very high level. So what we term the learning relationship, that is the heart of the change. So that is in essence the whole process about what you're wanting to set out to do or to change. They might want to change that person's, their thought process, their confidence, whatever it is you're working on with that individual, that there is going to be a change taking place. When we talk about context, that you have to set the context. So is it work or is it personal? It's generally a work setting. So the context of what you want to achieve is generally you want to improve something within their working environment. Or indeed, it may well be personal. We always term the client as the mentee. So if you're becoming a mentor, your client, in effect, will set the agenda. Please, I can't illustrate or highlight that enough. The agenda should always be set by your mentee. What do they want to achieve? You, in turn, will then facilitate and guide any learning and development takes place for that individual. You can guide and support. And the outcome from that is the change element. That's where you'll start to see the change that occurs as a result of effective learning and development. You're guiding them through this process. The framework, that's the element that's in place for the change process that provides movement and direction. That very much comes back to you. What framework, what relationship, what support structures in place, what framework has been put in place and guided by yourself to make sure that change is happening, but is moving forward as well. But again, that's where you start to see the benefits of that and where skills comes in. That's where you start to see the increase in skills, that will start to see that potential released. And that's where you know that learning relationship is working. The qualities comes down to you as the mentor. So what qualities are you going to adopt to make sure that you're affirming, enabling and motivating that mentee to continue their development journey, whether it be professional or on a personal level? And the ethics part, I think it speaks for itself. Please ensure that there are safeguards in place for you and the individual. Everything must be done ethically, and that will in turn, really enhance that mentoring process. So again, this is very much high level. This publication goes right to the heart of it, but it's certainly another model that I found extremely useful to help signpost me through mentoring relationships to make sure that, I'm doing the best job that I can do for that individual or mentee at any given time. So, manager and the mentor, a lot of people think, could there not be a bit of conflict here? Well, no, because there's a different focus, and this might sound quite direct and clinical, but I think it's important that we, identify what the differences are. I've seen a lot of managers, kind of take umbrage when they realise somebody's got a mentor, and they shouldn't. They should encourage that, because in turn they'll get a better and more driven employee. But as it says there, a manager focus has to be, that's their role on achieving organisational and departmental goals. So again, any advice and decision that they make, it will have to be aligned with the organisational vision. That's what management's all about. Whereas a mentor will shift to the personal and career growth of the individual, whereas their agenda, it will always be inclined towards the sharing of knowledge and experience. So that's, I think, a good way of drawing out what the differences are. Again, a manager might delay, as it says there, or restrict somebody from taking up, some kind of learning opportunity if there is a direct conflict with the organisation's expectations of the employee. But again, that's up to the manager, to maybe manage those expectations. Yeah, I would love to see you, moving into X, Y, Z, or get you training on that. However, that's maybe the next step. But that all comes through good management. So again, A mentor will never restrict exploring new avenues. And again, I can't stress that enough. You might need to manage expectations, but however, never restrict somebody going and exploring what new avenues are out there. But again, just make sure it's going to fit with their own career growth and their aspirations. But that then goes back to the learning relationship and the skilled helper model I was speaking to you about. It's about managing those expectations, but allow somebody to go and explore opportunities about potentially where they would like to go. And again, I thought this was a really good way of kind of summarising it. Mentors guide, managers set targets, whereas mentoring is personal, management is work. I think that's a good way of just compacting the two. Both work, but both need to work in tandem. So thank you very much for your time. I hope you've enjoyed the session. If there's any takes from it, absolutely, that's what it's all about. Certainly something that's very, very passionate to me, both coaching and mentoring. If that's something you'd like to explore more or indeed become CMI qualified, then certainly be in touch with us at the Academy, because that's one of the courses that we're on. So thank you very much for your time. I hope you've enjoyed the session. It will be one of many, hopefully, that we're going to start recording for you. So thank you very much for your time, and I hope you've enjoyed the session. Cheers now. Bye-bye.